That's right. It's time for Cruise Control, your on air automotive magazine. Hello, everyone. I'm Fred Staab, and here, as always, is Les Jackson. Hey, Les.
Hey, Fred. Exciting day.
Yet,
Exciting day.
yes, it is. We not only have our normal roster of reveals and new technology, but we're going to celebrate a big anniversary for Ford, 120 years old. Can you believe it? And you were there the day they opened.
Absolutely. I was there. I was just a teenager at the time.
Well, yes, it's all coming up. But we're going to start with this story. GM says it's hard to sell electric vehicles even if they only cost $30,000. And that might be the reason that it seems like they might be bringing back the Chevy Bolt with their new Ultium batteries.
I think that's a great idea. And speaking of great ideas, Subaru prices out its three-row SUV, getting bigger.
Yeah, getting a lot
Uh,
bigger.
Boy, and VW axes another sedan from its lineup. Are there any left other than the Golf?
I'm not sure. I think they're going to have an electric sedan, so we'll talk about that. And talking tech, Mercedes says you'll be able to have a natural conversation with your car thanks to
Hmm,
AI.
I don't know. I mean, I like the car, but not that much. And it's going to backseat drive.
Yeah.
That's what. Anyway, big celebration. Ford turns 120 years old, and who better to come on the show and tell us about what's going on than Ted Ryan, who's Ford's Archives and Heritage Brand Manager. He'll be joining us right about at the half hour, and he's been on before. It's always a great time with him, so looking forward to that.
Yeah, absolutely. Always great to have Ted on the show. All that and more when we get rolling on this edition of Cruise Control, your on air automotive magazine. What do you think about that, Les? Bringing back the Chevy Bolt. Mary Barra drove one, loved it, and said, "Why are we getting rid of this great little
Yeah,
EV?"
well, we've asked the same question, and yeah, it'd be nice if they'd restyle it, kind of make it sporty, sportier.
Yeah,
But it'd be terrific. I think a lot of people would like it.
yeah. Imagine though if it even got a 300-mile range this time around, or
Yeah,
maybe more with the new battery pack. I think they should keep it. I think they should have an entry-level vehicle. And as I say all the time, if you're buying an electric vehicle and just want to dip your toe in it, something like that's a good start because
yeah.
the technology is just going to get better and better and better. And you don't want to be tied into the old technology. So there you have it. Hey, Fred Staub and Les Jackson, we will be right back with Cruise Control. So buckle up because we're just getting started.
That's right, Ollie. Hey, welcome back to Cruise Control. This is your on-air automotive magazine. You know that. You've been watching us for years.
Hope so.
And and we're going to start with GM and the Bolt, which we believe is going to come back
Yeah.
because they've been thinking about this, talking about it, obviously, and there's room for a $30,000 electric vehicle. Maybe there's room for selling tens of thousands of them.
Yep. Of
And one way to do that is resurrect the Bolt, not the Volt. It's their fault for naming them those two.
right.
But this is a great idea. I
Well,
just,
the least expensive vehicle EV was supposed to be the Equinox EV, starting
right.
at 30,000 and going up from there, and that has all-wheel drive and It's got the silhouette that people love. We'll call it a station wagon, but it's really a station wagon, but they call it a crossover.
Yep.
But speaking with the Marketplace podcast, General Motors CEO Mary Barra suggested the Bolt may live on, saying it's an important vehicle in the automaker's portfolio. And uh, she said that she drove one and thought it was great, but that it had the old batteries in there, and they
Right.
wanted to redo it a third generation, I guess, or would it be yeah, third generation, um, and it would have a 40% reduction in battery costs and potentially higher range, right? Which, and its range wasn't bad. I mean, that was the first vehicle to get over 200 and some odd miles of range, right?
That's right. But people. The big problem still, even people with electric vehicles, is they if you have a gas powered vehicle, you seldom even look at your gas gauge. You just drive it because you always know you're never more than probably a half a mile from a gas station.
Right.
Whereas electric vehicles, you still have to think about it, and um, that scares people. Some people,
Albeit it's gotten a lot easier because
yeah,
most of
much
the
easier.
vehicles you just put in to Android Auto or Apple CarPlay and say, find me a
That's right.
charger, and they'll be within 5 miles. It's pretty easy.
Yeah, I've found all the electrics I've tested this year. They know. You just ask the screen, where's the next charger, and they'll give you a choice of three or four.
Yeah. Well, the other thing, too, is the current generation Bolt is built in the U.S. If they build this somewhere
Yeah,
else with a battery pack that's 40% less, and they can still get, let's say, 300 miles of range and sell it for $25,000 well equipped, that's where it would fit into the lineup because the Equinox is going to start about 30.
right.
That would be, I think, would do more for getting people into electric vehicles than anything else. What do you think?
I think so, and you know that dealers would end up having programs where if you subscribed for a little bit of money a month, that when you're ready to take a trip, they'll give you a loaner
Yeah, that's a great idea.
gas powered vehicle. The dealers are good businessmen.
Yeah. So I kind of think it will happen. I think
I
they'll
think
make it
so.
come back, and um, I think it was a beloved vehicle. Really, I think it made sense. It made sense to me. You and I drove it. I like the first gen. I like the second gen. I thought this is a great little commuter car.
Yeah, fun to drive.
Fun to
It's
drive.
kind of like a VW Golf.
Yeah, I agree. That's a good comparison to it. Had everything in it: heated
Yep.
seats, heated steering wheel, navigation through Android Auto, Apple CarPlay. Really, when I drove it, I had the EUV. We did a review not that long ago, and I thought I would just like the regular Bolt. I take the
That's
range.
yeah.
It wasn't that much
Regular
smaller.
Bolt is fine. Get in the winter, heats right on.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. So let's see what happens. I think if Mary Bauer says we should do that, I think they will bring it back. I really do. And where will it be built? Probably not where it's built now.
Probably not, yeah, but maybe they'll build a new plant.
Who knows? Well, GM says they are having trouble getting people into EVs, even at $30,000. They're not profitable. And they say lowering the prices of EVs isn't the smartest move for profit because of the cost of batteries. And maybe this new Bolt that they're talking about will help them out with that. So, hey, when we come back, plenty more to go. We're going to tell you about Subaru pricing out its new 3-row SUV. So stay tuned.
Well, welcome back. Welcome back. As Fred mentioned before the break, we're going to take you over to the Subaru channel.
Is there
Not
such a
really a
thing?
channel; it's still us. Um, but they've got some pricing on the 2024 Ascent, which is their three-row uh, read big
Yes.
SUV.
Yeah. So,
It's the trend of big SUVs is just not slowing down.
all right. So, what was the big Subaru SUV called before it was the Ascent? The Ascent
Um,
replaced it.
yes, that's right. What was that called? There was the Forester.
It was a name of a
Oh,
place.
the Tribeca.
The Tribeca. Remember, it had a strange grill on the front,
Yeah,
almost looked
eh,
like an Alfa Romeo almost,
yeah.
and it was not that popular. I don't know
It's what.
how
Yeah,
popular Ascent is. Do you know?
I have no idea. I never see them on on the roads. But I know the Tribeca was constantly referred to as controversial styling,
Yeah, it's probably
which,
you want it to be more like industry leader and
right. When you say the styling is controversial, you're really saying, hey, it's ugly.
well, the Ascent is much more of a
Oh, it's traditional.
traditional. It starts at 34,195. It has the latest version of eyesight driver technology. And then it has the wide angle mono camera as opposed to the two stereo cameras. And it goes on up from there. There's the Asset Premium, which is
Right.
36,000, includes all the standard equipment from the base and adds blind spot detection, which is important, and lane change assist and rear cross traffic alert. I love rear cross traffic alert.
Oh, I depend on it.
Yeah, I love it too. And then Asset Onyx Edition, that is the blacked out edition. The vehicle is equipped with their Star Tex water repellent material and paired with black accent trim. And then there's the Asset Limited, 41,895. The Asset Onyx Edition Limited, 46,000. Then the Asset Touring, 48,495. Um, so not inexpensive, but if you're a Subaru fan, at least you don't have to pay for all-wheel drive. It comes with the package, doesn't it?
That's right. That is Subaru's trademark. These, actually, I'm not saying that they're cheap because they're not, but they're not as high priced as I thought they might be.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, you see, it's getting pretty common to see vehicles $55,000, $60,000 in this
Yeah.
class, and these are well-equipped vehicles. And the whole idea is dealers were having people that said, "Well, I want to get a three-row SUV. What do you got?" And they're like, "Nothing." So they would leave. So they did not want people leaving the um, Subaru dealership. So this keeps them in the family. Um, it's interesting. I wonder what it drives like. It's a big vehicle, but it's equipped with the standard 2.4-liter turbocharged boxer engine, 260 on horsepower, 277 with a high torque linear CVT. It's the only engine available. Obviously, they don't have V6s and things like that. Um, Not a huge engine output these days for such a big vehicle, right?
Well, no, but their all-wheel drive system is quite efficient, so it doesn't take away as much power as other manufacturers' all-wheel drive systems do.
Okay.
I don't know what the vehicle weighs. It's got to be close to 4,000 pounds,
I
but
would imagine.
they probably have geared it in such a way that it's got a tall final drive ratio.
And it can still tow 5,000 pounds too,
which
so
is
it
amazing.
has reserve there for sure. Um,
Wonder, we don't have the gas mileage figures. That's where it might suffer a little.
yeah, yeah, we don't. But and there is no hybrid or anything like that. So,
No.
I mean, you look at some of the Toyota offerings with hybrids and things, they get pricey, but you can have a big vehicle like this and get in the 30s, which is pretty amazing. So, there you have it, though. If you are a Subaru fan and you want to have the biggest in the lineup, Ascent is the way to go. Ascent. A lot of safety material, a lot of safety equipment, and I think people that are Subaru fans will love it. Um, Sad news, Les. Another coupe is going away. It's sort of a coupe. This is called a coupe, but the Arteon, the VW Arteon, will be discontinued.
And yet it's only like 3 or 4 years old.
Yeah, they're just the last generation after the 2024 model year. Remember when this came out? It was like the premium car, the Halo car.
Absolutely. I really like it. I would love to see how how a deal you could get on a used one.
Yep. But part of the problem is it was kind of an odd placement in the pricing scheme. It's $10,000 more than the Toyota Camry, but cheaper than slightly larger cars like the BMW 5 Series and Audi A6. So it kind of put it in a weird place. But I like the vehicle. It is they call that coupe styling, even though it's a four door.
I I, I think it's really attractive both inside and out.
Of course, there's a ID. I forget what number EV coming, sedan coming to the U.S. from Volkswagen. So that will certainly sort of be the replacement for it, I'm sure. But sad to see it go. I've driven those and reviewed them, and yeah, it's just another sedan, not continuing on. But hey, we'll tell you something that's continuing on, and that is Ford. Ford is celebrating 120 years of being in the car business. That's amazing, isn't it?
It's really wonderful. I can't imagine corporations today will last 120 years.
Yeah, not in their current form with basically the same family running it, and that is a
Right.
major accomplishment. When we come back after the break, Ted Ryan is going to join us from Ford and tell us a little bit some of the backstories about it and what they're doing to celebrate 120 years of this. And also, there were a tremendous number of plants around the world. We'll talk about that a little bit too, as well. And I bet some of them are still building vehicles, and it's amazing to see a 32 Ford that has not been hot rodded. You know
I,
that
I would imagine the price of of an original 32 Ford unmolested is would be really high.
I wonder. That's something to. I don't know if Ted's great with the stats, but we'll ask him. In his estimate, are how many stock 32 Fords are there
Wow.
still around? Even 40 Fords.
That's right. He'll say, I think it's three.
It's three. Yeah, the rest have been turned into hot rods long time ago, probably by returning people from World War II, and they decided to pull the fenders off and
It
go racing on the
was,
dry lakes, right?
yeah, yeah.
So, yeah, so that's all coming up on Cruise Control. Ted's going to join us right after the break, so stay tuned to Cruise Control, your on-air automotive magazine. I'm Fred Staab. He is Les Jackson. When we come back, we're going to take a ride down 120 years of history. So you don't want to miss it. Stay tuned. Keep it buckled up. We will be right back on Cruise Control, your on-air automotive magazine. And welcome back to Cruise Control, your on-air automotive magazine. Fred Staab and Les Jackson. And we've been joined by Ted Ryan from Ford. He runs the Ford Heritage Vault, among other things, and he knows everything about Ford. Isn't that true, Ted?
Well, I don't know if I know everything, but I know a lot about Ford.
There's a lot to know. I mean, 120 years you're celebrating, right?
We are 120th anniversary. There's not that many companies that can say that they survived 120 years. In fact, if you think back to it, the day that we were founded in 1903, June 16th, 1903, when Henry Ford convinced 11 investors to give him $28,000, even though he'd failed with his two previous auto companies, he still talked them into doing it. There were 1,000 automobile manufacturers across America and 250 alone in Detroit. So the odds of survival were not high, but he had this little thing up his sleeve called his ingenuity, and the Model T followed, and the rest, as they say, is history.
So when the Model T was launched, was the assembly line idea for assembling Model Ts in place, or were the first Model Ts kind of hand-built?
They were hand-built, and I'm actually on the board at the Paquette plant. I got to put in a plug. If you ever are in Dearborn, please do check out the Paquette plant. It was the second plant that Henry Ford used, and it's where the Model T was developed. And they were hand-built. Essentially, 10 or 12 people would go work on one, and an hour and a half later or 2 hours later, it's built. And then they would go to the next car, and then the next car. The assembly line came along in 1913, right as they were moving from Paquette to Highland Park. And that's when production went up. They got it at one point, guys, down to one every 28 seconds.
Wow.
The Model T came off the line. So.
Yeah, it's
And the cost went from $850 to $250.
That's amazing.
Yeah, the cost came down as well.
and it was, the Model T looks awkward and tall, but people don't really understand that there were hardly any paved roads back then.
That's correct.
And
the Model T was
in wagon ruts.
Yeah, and the Model T did a couple of things for America in general. Until the Model T, your steering wheel might be on the right side, it might be on the left side, it might be in the middle. You might be driving a steam car and a battery car. Clara Ford actually had a battery car. She liked to be able to push a button and have it start. But then Model T, all that you had. If you guys ever see a Model T, if you get a chance to go to ride in one, there's no driver's side door. You get in on the passenger side. And that's why we drive on the left-hand side of the car and drive on the right-hand side of the road, was so that Henry Ford could pull over and drop his passengers off at the curb and not have them get muddy.
Oh, wow.
Amazingly durable car. It transformed the world, and it changed the way Americans thought about transportation.
Yeah, it is amazing. And so what was the big pitch? Why did he tell those 11 investors, I know there's 1,000 manufacturers, but I'm going to be better?
What he did is he convinced them that the route to prosperity was in building low-cost cars. And not all of them agreed with him. The Model K sold for about $2,000. It was an expensive one. And Henry had his alphabet of cars, started with the Model A and got all the way down to the Model T. And once he got to the T, he pretty much stopped. But the driving the cost out was different. Cadillacs were expensive. Mercedes are expensive. Henry wanted a car for everybody, and the T is what served that particular role. And at one point, I'm a historian who's horrible with dates. I'm going to say it's 1917. It may be a year or two before, but we had 57% of the world's share of automobile sales.
That's
57% of the world's share was Model Ts.
Wow. Well, the other thing we were talking about, the 32 Ford. Are there any non-modified 32 Fords, or are they all hot rods? That's what.
They're all hot rods.
And even the 40 Ford too. A lot of them became hot rods.
Well, and guys, one of the funnest things that we did is, after they listen to your program, if you tell your listeners to go to Spotify and check out the Ford 120 Spotify playlist I created. And the Deuce Coupe, which is another name for the 32 Ford, is one of the most celebrated cars and songs. So when I did this Spotify playlist, I looked for things that were unusual. And yes, you've got your Mustang Sallies, but and you got your Beach Boys and singing about the Deuce Coupe, but you also Manfred Mann's Earth Band singing "Blinded by the Light," where they do the most misheard lyric of all time, where it's revved up like a deuce, another runner in the night.
That's right.
About,
Yeah.
yeah.
And Maybelline,
Maybelline is,
nothing outruns a V8 Ford.
we
Yeah.
got a Bo Diddley. I didn't put Maybelline, but we got a Bo Diddley Ride on Josephine in there, and I've got a ode, two odes to the Model T. One of them is Henry Made a Lady Out of Lizzie from 1922, and the other is As My Ford Went Merrily Along, recorded on Edison disc, and from 1915. So there's 121 songs. Celebrates all of our brands, the T-Birds, the Lincolns, it's a fun list, and we thought it was kind of a lighthearted way to celebrate a birthday and to share Ford in a unique and different way.
You also had something about Ford recipes, which is kind of I associate music with Ford, sure, but recipes?
Recipes, most people don't know it, but Ford Times, which was at one point in time the magazine with the largest subscription of any magazine in the world, even bigger than Reader's Digest, featured 4 to 6 restaurants across America. Every issue, it came out monthly. So there's 3,200 restaurants. Think of diners, drive-ins, and dives before Guy Fieri, and we were doing it already.
Wow.
And so we have some of those recipes, including a chocolate chip soy cookie recipe that Henry Ford loved, the Murray salad. And those are being featured through our collaboration centers in Southeast Michigan. So anybody who's in Southeast Michigan, phone a friend who works at Ford and get in to try those recipes.
Wow. That's cool. That's cool. I guess, Les, it's a way to sell, it's a smart way, kind of really kind of in the past, but now people do things like that. It's sort of like product placement, well, you need to go to this restaurant, but you're probably going to need a Ford vehicle to get there in it.
Yeah.
That's it. And this Mac
Ford
go on.
Americans on the road. And he was the guy that really popularized camping.
Right. He did with the Vagabonds.
Yeah.
So the Ford Times was published and distributed via a dealership. So if you had bought a Ford in 1949, you're buying a 49 Ford, you are automatically signed up for a subscription to Ford Times. And it wasn't about Ford. It was about National Forest, how you go camping, where you should go if you're visiting Omaha. It was basically a travelogue magazine, kind of like Destinations or Departures is today. But each issue featured 4 or 6 restaurants, and we have compiled those. So hang on, later in the year, you're going to hear more about Ford Times and the Ford Heritage Vault together.
That is so cool, Les.
Very cool.
Yeah. I mean, you think about that. The only manufacturer I can think that still does that is Harley Davidson. They have the Enthusiast, and they probably got it from Ford. Although they were around at the same time, I guess, right?
Founded the same year, they're 120, and their big celebration in Milwaukee is going to feature the Foo Fighters and Green Day.
Wow!
And I asked Farley, I said, "How come we don't get Foo Fighters and Green Day?"
He said, "Stick with your Maurice salad." Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Wow.
That's just wouldn't it be neat to be that old and to have lived to see all this?
Henry Ford would love what is going on today. He would love the ingenuity and the engineering that are going into the new battery electric vehicles. He was a tinkerer. I mean, the Model T never stayed the same. Every year, we didn't come up with a new model, but he always had new features. And we just had his personal Model A on display at our headquarters building, designed by Edsel. But then Henry tinkered with it, and he built cup holders into it, guys. In 1927, Henry Ford built cup holders to hold his special water bottles.
Good for him.
It really was ahead of. Now everyone walks around with a water bottle. He was ahead of it.
And Henry Ford was doing it in 1927. He drank water incessantly. So.
That's
these guys. That was an era, the first 2 decades of the 20th century, when just absolute genius mechanics developed things.
Yeah.
Henry and his engineers and
and Chrysler.
and
I mean,
Frazier and
yeah,
Benz, and it's just an endless number. Uh, the Dodge brothers, the Duesenberg
we
family.
were investors. The Dodge brothers were investors. They were two of the 11 that Henry talked into giving them money, and they did it because they were coach builders. So the more cars
Yeah.
that Henry sold, the more coaches he bought from the Dodge brothers.
Yep.
Because Henry didn't care what the coach looked like ever. But he wanted the engine and the frame to be built by Ford, and then he stuck a Dodge coach on it. It was just crazy how
Terrific.
We will
it
be
all.
we will be back with more from Ted and more history from Ford. So stay tuned to Cruise Control, your on-air automotive magazine. We'll be right back. And welcome back to Cruise Control, your on-air automotive magazine. Ford is celebrating 120 years in the car business with everything from Spotify playlists. We learned about the Ford recipes, including their magazine that they had. What's a Maurice salad? You never know what you're going to learn when you tune into Cruise Control. Isn't that right, Les?
Absolutely. And the Maurice salad does not use motor oil for dressing.
But it could.
It could.
But we are talking with Ted Ryan. If you have not checked out the Ford Heritage Vault, you should. I mean, you can spend hours on there, Ted. There's a lot going on there.
There is a lot going on, and we actually see the user stats, and we know that the typical user is spending about 28 minutes in the site, which
amazing.
in the world of the World Wide Web, that is astounding. And we're excited to announce that we just began adding place photos to the vault, which actually was a very complex thing, guys. We actually had to change the metadata in the backend structure because originally it was only going to be model, it was going to be vehicles, by model, by year, by whatever. So we had to add categories to be able to add locations, and we added categories to be able to add people down the road and publications down the road. But we added about 500 photos that feature 50 Ford locations around the world, and you're showing some of them up here now. Classics like the Rotunda, Willow Run, where the bombers were built, the Rouge, Chicago Assembly, Dagenham, Cologne. And that's just the beginning.
And Cologne is coming back. I remember Cologne because they built, I think they built the Explorer engine there at one point.
They built a lot of different things at Cologne. They built my initial 77 Mercury Capri.
Yeah.
In Cologne. It was one of the German imports. If you were lucky enough to get a Capri Ghia model in the 70s on the Mercury line, then you got a German-built car at American prices.
Yeah.
In the Cologne, we just announced last week, guys, that the new all-electric Explorer is being built in Cologne, and that it is being redone and rededicated as a BEV, a battery electric vehicle plant. So
Wow.
Cologne is still in our future as a battery. The Rotunda is showing up now. We grew up in Michigan. You knew the Rotunda. It was actually built for the World's Fair. And at the end of the World's Fair, Henry Ford had it moved back to Dearborn, where it was where we showcased new cars. It's just one of the 500 photos that we added to the vault in the last week.
I'm going to have to look up the Norfolk, Virginia plant because they made Model Ts there, but in the 90s they were making the F-150.
Yep.
And we went down on an event and signed our names on the sheet metal and drove the thing home.
Didn't they build Cougars there for a while too?
I think maybe they did. Yeah, it was an old plant.
Yeah, and that's the 500 pictures we added now is just phase one, and we did it for our birthday. For the my goal is that by the end of this year, maybe and not by then, by next year, every plant across America or every city across America that had a Ford plant will be represented. Like I grew up in Atlanta. I remember the Hapeville plant. I remember the Ponce plant, and I've got great pictures of them. We just haven't added them yet, but somebody tweeted at me the other day for pictures of the Seattle plant that I then posted on Twitter. And they're like, oh, we want more. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to do this. We're going to get more on there.
Let's ask, how many plants did Ford have at one point? I mean, he had his own architect that would travel the country and build, Ford buildings, but it seems like it's hundreds. Is it more than hundreds?
It's more than hundreds. Basically, every city had a plant. We were talking about it off air, but the Model Ts were shipped flat packed, just like IKEA is. So that your crates, you would get your crates and you'd uncrate them and then build a Model T, and the crates themselves were used as the floorboards within the Model T. So nothing was wasted. That was a very Henry Ford thing. You showed the soybean plant at the Rouge as one of those pictures. So Henry Ford was experimental. He experimented with soybean as part of the renewable source of materials for vehicles. My goodness, he would have loved today. He would have waltzed right into today and said, renewable? I was doing that 80 years ago.
And he'd probably say, well, how come we're not renewing this and that? And
He'd still be innovating. But I asked you during the break, and I think it was kind of a fun conversation, what vehicle in the Ford current lineup, would Henry Ford be driving if he was still with us today?
I think he'd be driving the Lightning, the electric pickup truck, because he was very utilitarian, the thought that he could get something that he could then power his house with for 3 days if the power went out. And keep in mind, this is a guy that built his own water turbine generator at his house to power his house. So he was the initial off the grid guy too. So the thought that he could walk around with a power pack, and we've talked about it before, but he sort of originated the whole camping thing with the vagabonds, and he could take he would 100% be driving a Lightning, and Edsel would 100% be driving the biggest Navigator with the biggest engine he could get in it.
Yeah, and Henry Ford might have a camper on the back in the bed of that Lightning. It would be perfect. And as you said, Ford did a lot with soybean, even maybe 10, 15 years ago. I know they were doing that. So he kind of set the tone, didn't he?
He did. And were you in Dearborn today, I'd be giving you a chocolate chip cookie with soybean in it, because one of the recipes that we did was Henry's favorite chocolate chip cookie with soybean, because he was eating that in the 30s. And that's one of the things that we did for the 120th was develop a chocolate chip cookies in conjunction with Zingerman's. If you've ever been to Detroit, Zingerman's famous deli. They did this chocolate chip cookie for us.
Oh, that's neat. Anything else that Ford's doing to celebrate, Ted?
Yeah, if you go to the @Ford social channels, it's fun. You'll see a video that Wyden and Kennedy created for us, where a Bronco and a Lightning blow out birthday candles in a new and unique way. They filmed it in the desert, and they actually had these candles, and so they used their own momentum and the air generated as they go by to blow out the candles. But it also has a motif of a montage rather of famous Ford scenes over time. The Model T, the V8 engine, the $5 a day wage, Rosie the Riveter building the bombers, us kicking Ferrari's butt at Le Mans, and so forth and so on. It's a fun video. You go to @Ford on either Instagram or Twitter or Facebook, and you can watch this video.
It's just, is there going to be a parade of any kind?
No, 120 was an odd number. So we decided to take a fanciful approach, thus the Spotify playlist. But as part of this, we're already planning 125. That's a nice big round one. And I would look for more. And then next year, guys, 2024 is 60 for Mustang.
Wow.
The Mustang qualifies for Social Security, isn't it?
Absolutely. It deserves everything it gets, because it's the most loved American model.
Yep. Absolutely.
We're already planning. I've already attended one meeting talking about what are we going to do for 60, and frankly, we don't know yet. So if any of your listeners have a fun idea of how to celebrate Mustang at 60, have them write archives@ford.com, and my team by the way, I never give you that address, archives@ford.com. My team monitors that every day, and we can decode a VIN for you. We can get you information you need about makes and models. It's a one-stop shop for Ford reference material.
Yeah, that is a great asset. And how many Ford plants are still around? I know there was the story. There's people tried to save the one in Jacksonville. It was a Model T plant, but it's just too far gone. And
that one it made it all the way up the food chain in Ford, but it was too far gone, and there wasn't a really good business plan around it. There's a lot of them, and there's a lot that have been repurposed. The one in, I'm going from memory, St. Louis, somebody tweeted me picture of the St. Louis plant, and it's now been converted into a cultural arts center.
Oh, neat.
And the Seattle one has been converted into kind of a avant-garde storage facility. So a lot of people took these old plants and found ways to repurpose them.
Yeah.
Typically the architecture was always very sound. The one in Paducah, Kentucky now houses a mellow mushroom pizza place or something like that.
Ted Ryan, it's always great having you on Cruise Control. Thanks again. We'll have you back. So stay tuned to Cruise Control, your on-air automotive magazine. We'll see you down the road.
Bye, guys.